When I'm in the trenches, when I'm talking to employees are telling me in confidence that, you know what? I can finish my job in 3 hours, not 8 hours, but I'm not going to tell my manager that I can finish my job in 3 hours because what if I get in trouble? That's a problem.
Welcome to the next episode of the Domino Effect. Today's guest is actually very close to me. We have been friends. We were actually roommates a long time back. I'm not going to date myself, but I have Ali Merchant, whose extensive background in learning and development, has written books about being all-in manager. And we'll get into those details in a few seconds. But I wanted to bring in Ali to introduce himself and give us more details on what he's been doing these days, what keeps him busy.
I'm really glad to be here. You guys, I know, have a new podcast. When Deep told me he was starting this podcast, I thought he was not going to invite me, but here I am. So I'm really delighted to be here. And as Vandeep mentioned, I have spent, and now I'm going to date myself, I have spent almost 18 years doing just one thing, which is building and scaling learning and development departments. So companies will bring me in if they want product adoption and they need specific type of technical training. That's one use case. Companies will bring me in if they want to stand up a leadership development department or if they want me to coach very senior leaders. I spend a lot of my time doing that. And more recently, I'm spending a lot of time researching, writing, and advising companies on how they can use AI to enable and upskill their workforce. As Vandeep mentioned, I'm also one of those people that you might see on TV that are conveniently displaying their book at the back, and we can talk about the book. So, doing a lot of learning and development, writing, leading, etc. And I'm glad to be here.
So, Ali, I think the elephant in the room, we should just get into that. What are some of the challenges or like something working, not working, you have seen from your experience in organizations making that AI transformation change?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm getting this question from a lot of people, and I have one line. Think of it as a disclaimer, which is we are building a plane in the sky right now. That's what's going on when it comes to AI transformation. There's no specific playbook that is going to work for everyone. There's a lot of nuance in this space here. So I want to start by saying what I'm about to share with you, treat those as general guiding principles on what is working and what is not working. So I'm going to take you through these and then we can kind of talk about it. Some of them are a little controversial. Some of them are common sense, but there are a couple of controversial ones here as well. So I'm going to start with the first one. And this is a mistake I'm seeing a lot of companies make, which is they're treating the AI rollout as a tech rollout. It's not a tech rollout. This is a change management play. This is a people management play as well. So I'll take a step in a different direction. So almost 6 to 7 years back, we were trying to roll out Salesforce in our company. That's a tech rollout. You're teaching people how to use a specific piece of software. When it comes to AI, it's a little different. Let me give you one specific example. I was reading this NBC poll that was saying that people in the US are more afraid of AI than ICE. Now, I've never seen any software which is so loved and so hated at the same time. So the point that I'm trying to make, you guys, is we need to have these types of conversations. People are, on one hand, they're excited to use the technology, but on the other hand, they're afraid what the technology is going to do for their job. So I want to introduce you to this idea called the belief anxiety paradox. And this is new research coming out from Harvard. And what the belief anxiety paradox is saying is 4 out of 10 employees right now believe in the power of AI, but also have anxiety what AI is going to do to their jobs. So again, the point that I'm trying to make is when you're teaching people how to use AI, we have to talk about these specific types of challenges. We have to talk about what AI is going to do to their jobs. We have to talk about what we know about AI, what we do not know about AI, so people can kind of move in the right direction. When I'm in the trenches, when I'm talking to employees are telling me in confidence that, you know what, I can finish my job in 3 hours, not 8 hours, but I'm not going to tell my manager that I can finish my job in 3 hours, because what if I get in trouble? That's a problem. So we have to really start with the lens of change management. We have to talk about these specific issues before we start to move towards use this, use Notebook LM or use Claude Code. So that's the first thing, which is let's not treat this as a tech rollout. Let's treat this as a change management exercise. The second one is a little controversial, which is don't lead with training, lead with a specific use case. Now, it's controversial because I've spent my 18 years training people, and I'm telling you, don't lead with training, lead with use cases. So I'm gonna share a quick story with you. So back in 2006, I was a new guy at this great company, and this was a very data intensive job. This was a startup. I was the second or third employee in the San Francisco office. And this employee from Boston flew down, and she taught me how to use pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. She taught me to use pivot tables and VLOOKUPs because that was the only way to run these reports faster. Now, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying. This was not a generic Excel training. This was a specific use case, and the solution to that was using VLOOKUPs and pivot tables. This is where we're making a mistake. We're telling people use AI. What I am saying is first identify specific use cases and then use AI to train your people. So I want to get really clear. Let me give you a very specific example of what I'm saying. So last year, I was teaching a group of leaders, group of managers, how to become better leaders. And if you guys have ever managed people, one of the hardest parts of becoming a manager is giving difficult feedback. I don't know about you. No one wakes up in the morning thinking, I want to give difficult feedback to my employees, right? So how would we use AI here to train people? What we decided was we would use the book. The book has a chapter on feedback. Yes, shameless plugin. And what we did was we created a custom GPT based on feedback. And then we had these managers role play with AI on how to start giving difficult feedback. Now, do you see what's happening here? We're not training you on AI. We're not doing that. The use case then becomes, how do I use AI to become a better manager? Now, I'm going to pause. Do you guys have any questions so far on what I'm explaining?
One question I have is, I think you kind of touched on it, that there is this anxiety, right? With any technology shift, a lot of the users, right, within the organization would have this AI anxiety, right? Are there any steps an organization can take to build that psychological safety in a team that is worried about AI eventually automating their roles, right? Because
Right.
that's the anxiety which gets you.
Yeah, and it's a good question. I think the worst thing we do is we ignore the conversation, right? If we ignore the conversation, then the other person starts to create scenarios in their own head. What I tell senior leaders is, instead of ignoring the conversation, embrace the conversation and talk about the fact that we are using AI not to replace you. And listen, I'm not going to say to increase productivity, because who the hell knows what that even means anymore, right? But we're using AI to help you become more successful. Our goal is not to end up taking this technology and replacing you. Now, don't make this up, but at least have an honest conversation. That's one thing. But I've spent a lot of time in the transformation world. And one thing I tell people is it's okay for you to tell someone, I don't know the answer to your question, instead of manufacturing something. People are going to ask really difficult questions. It's okay to say, I'm not sure how this happens in the next 10 years, but here's what I know now. Right? So going back, and I know I'm being redundant, but I'm being redundant for a reason here. Organizations are sidestepping that conversation. In fact, this is a use case in and of itself. And the first question you asked me was on anxiety. That was the first thing you said, right? That's literally what's happening in the workforce. So I think we need to have that conversation. We need to have a clear strategy in place that AI is not here to replace you. It's here to augment. It's here to make you better. And we're not pushing it down your throat. We just want you to start using it to become better at your jobs. I think that's one way of doing it versus ignoring the conversation.
So yeah, Ali, I think that strikes a chord with at least Wandeep and I, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners who are leaders, who are managers in our own respective fields, right? I think the who's gonna my thing is we talk about change management from an organizational perspective. I think there's got to be how do you train managers to actually figure out how to how do you change the perspective of both themselves first and the employees that they work for, right? I feel like do you feel, and again, maybe there is no one right answer.
Right.
Do you leverage AI to train you on how to do that? Is that an effective way to do it? Or do you call someone from the outside who's probably done this and is a step ahead from where the organization is? What have you seen?
Yeah. So the thing, and again, you can go in both directions, which is you can go outside or you can go in house. But and I hope this answers your question because it's a great question. What I would advise a manager to do is to model over a mandate. So let me explain what that means, modeling over mandates. Mandates means everyone needs to get certified by tomorrow. Model means let me model my behavior. So this is a really good example, which is if I'm using AI and I get a really bad output, I'm going to share that with my team. That when I used AI for this specific use case, honestly, the output sucked, right? But maybe I need to get better at prompting AI. So here is how I'm going to prompt it. So when it comes to change management, the best change management happens when you lead by example, right? So if an employee or if an individual contributor sees their manager use the technology and the manager say, you know what, this worked really well and this really sucked, the credibility of the credibility goes up and hopefully the adoption goes up as well. Now, in the real world, not every manager is willing to do that, right? And and again, this is a mistake I've seen. I've made this mistake in the past as well. If a manager is disengaged and they're saying, "I don't care. I don't want to use this thing." What we end up doing is we're like, "Okay, this guy is not cut out to be in our company." I think that's a problem. I think we have to talk to that manager. We have to ask them what is stopping them from using this technology. And then we also, and this is where I become the bad cop here, we also need to have some consequences for people. If everyone is supposed to be using AI and a certain number of your people aren't using AI, there have to be some kind of consequences so people start using it. But going back to your question, the idea that I would advise people is lead by example here. Try to use the tool yourself. Use that as an example versus tell people how to use the tool and you're the one that's not using the tool. Okay. So
Wait,
we've spoken about the tech rollout. We spoke about leading with training. We spoke about modeling over mandates. The fourth one is one of my favorites, which is we need to have AI champions in the workforce. That's really important. Now, chances are everyone knows what an AI champion is. However, I've seen a lot of mistakes that organizations are making when they're choosing these AI champions. When it comes to an AI champion, just because you like AI doesn't mean you are suited to be an AI champion. That is a core mistake I see people make all the time. An AI champion needs two things. The first is they need to be a domain expert. They need to be a domain expert. So if it's the finance department, you need to be an expert on the finance processes. That's important. And the second one that I'm after is not only are you using AI, but you are a builder. You are actually really tinkering with this stuff. That makes a good AI champion. The third thing is something that I'm recently learning about, which is fascinating, is when you have AI champions, you need to pair an AI champion with, and this is going to blow your mind, with an AI skeptic.
Mhm.
Why
that's
is that?
interesting. Yeah.
Right? That's pretty, I was like, wow, that's a cool idea. Why is that? Because if there are 3 AI champions and one guy says, whoa, I want to use Notebook LM, the second guy's going to be like, yeah, Notebook LM is awesome. And the third guy's going to be like, oh my God, it's the best thing. So it's groupthink. It's an echo chamber. But if I pair an AI champion with an AI skeptic, the skeptic could be like, you know what? That's a really good idea, but I don't think it's going to work with the finance team. So now you have someone who's kind of within the ranks, who's coming up with these ideas, who's building, and they know what is not going to work. Now, that's half the battle, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have great AI champions and not reward them. This is a mistake I've seen before AI, which is we are not doing a good job of rewarding great employees. We do a horrible job of rewarding managers in the workplace, by the way, right? There's enough data that talks about that. So if you have AI champions, you need to make sure that they're being rewarded for going above and beyond. If they're not being rewarded, sooner or later, they're going to fizzle out. Any questions on the AI champions part, you guys?
And what are the typical ways to reward them?
Yeah. So a couple of things. You could do the simplest of things, like the basic things could be like, I'm being really tactical here, could be gift cards, bonuses, etc. But I think the real way of rewarding an AI champion is to listen to them, especially when they're saying, you know what, I think we need to go with this technology. Again, governance is something that we can talk about. But if an AI champion is really a domain expert, he or she knows what's going on, and they're coming up with these great ideas, and you're not really listening to them, you're not operationalizing what they're trying to say, why the heck do you even have an AI champion? They're not implementing anything. They're just there for show. So I think the intangible, when we ask a great question, by the way, the intangible here is to listen to them, operationalize some of the stuff that they're asking you to do. But then the tangible rewards could be bonuses, could be shout outs, could be, what the tangible stuff, everyone can get rewarded extrinsically. But from an intrinsic standpoint, what I'm really after is, does the AI champion have influence in the company? Can, when they're coming up with these ideas, with examples, are they being heard? Or are they just like, yeah, okay, we'll just keep the champion for the heck of it? I don't think that's going to work really well.
Ali, do you think that there is a very critical need to have like a council? And what I mean by that is, you have a company has different departments, right? You have sales, you have finance, you have billing, you have, all departments that, at some level, they probably overlap in the journey, but, they by and large are separate teams that perhaps work in silos for the most part. And so you have these subject matter experts that are AI champions in each of these, right? Do you feel that there's also importance where those, and you think you sort of mentioned it, where they have influence and impact in making corporate-wide decisions as a council, and working very closely with product and engineering teams to actually ensure that the AI, a solution, I would say, that's put in place actually works and continues to be iterated upon. Is that something that you've seen organizations intentionally think about?
So I've seen it, and I've typically seen the word council thrown around, or a COE thrown around in big companies. I'm seeing a lot of that. I don't know if I really don't know if it's working, but it's there. There is a function, a center of excellence, or a council. Sometimes I view it as almost the governance piece, where you have specific leaders of each of these functions, IT security, ops, with some embedded AI champions, and they're working on the governance piece of how this thing is going to get rolled out. And I think it's super important to have that type of representation. I'm not a governance expert here, but if the team becomes huge, then you're not going to make fast decisions here, right? But is there a place for an AI champion on the COE? Yes, as long as the COE is producing some deliverables, and they're not just there to say no to a lot of things, We see that a lot where they're just typically saying no, 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 and that reduces the cycle of innovation, right? So you need to have the champion, if possible, with specific people, not everyone, not hobbyists, but specific people from the leadership that could work. That's a different topic in and of itself. But I'm seeing the big companies like the 5, 10, 15, 20,000 up companies do it. I'm not typically seeing the 500 or 700 person company doing it. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not seeing that right now.
Got it. Another thing, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ali.
No. I'm here.
I was just going to ask another question, which was around trust or building trust with AI, right? We obviously, AI adoption is being sort of, I don't want to say forced upon, but perhaps, it's looked at from top. At least the organizations that perhaps have the most success is when you do it from top down, where you are having the C-level really push it from, to the lower levels. But if a manager uses AI to draft, for example, their feedback or emails, does that eventually bankrupt the reliability or care deposits in the trust bank? Like, where do you draw the line between AI and the,
And it's such a good question, Girish, and the answer is so difficult, and it's not a cop out. But I'll give you I have a story for a lot of things. I'll give you an actual story. So I was coaching the senior leader who got his performance review from his manager, and it was a pretty scathing performance review. So he called me. He was pretty stressed out. He's like, "Can we go through this together?" So we were going through it line by line. And he's reading it. And he's like, "Okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense." And then he goes to page 2 and he says just one word, AI, 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 AI. I'm like, "But what do you mean?" He's like, "No, she didn't write it. This was generated by AI. I know my manager doesn't talk like this. It's just a word salad here." So we're seeing a lot of that. And I don't like the word AI slop, but we're seeing that a lot in the workplace where people are using AI to give feedback. Again, if you do it responsibly, you can create trust. But if you do it the way we're seeing right now, that is a breach of trust. In fact, and I don't have the research on top of my head, but this research came out, I want to say a couple of months back, where HR was saying that typically when they would get third-party anonymous complaints, it would be 1 or 2 lines. And now we're getting paragraphs. And they're like, how are people learning to write so well? Well, it's all AI generated slop that someone's just going to ChatGPT and writing this, right? So this is, and I love this question because this is a core problem. And I don't have the answer to this problem because Girish, on one hand, the CEO says use AI. On the other hand, when the employee uses AI, we're penalizing the employee for using AI. So what is the solution here, right? The solution, or one part of the solution, is the leaders in this world will have the skill of 2 things, judgment and discernment, which is this is good and this is horrible AI slop. And until and unless we cannot differentiate between a good output, by the way, it sounds easy, it's not. Between good output and bad output, we're going to go in that cycle. So another thing, and we can talk about this, when I talk to organizations about training people, we talk a lot about discernment and judgment. How do you know this thing is actually right? Because at the end of the day, people say, oh, AI is this genius thing. It's literally probability of guessing the next letter. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's guessing to the mean. That's what it's doing. That's the truth of it. So how do you know what output is good and what output is bad? So that leads to this idea of discernment. But going back to what you were saying, there is a lot of breach of trust if you're just using AI to outsource your thinking. And I'm not a skeptic at all, right? I'm in the middle where, there's the AI doomers and then the people who say AI is here to save humanity. I'm in the smack in the middle of it. But I am pretty disappointed with what I'm seeing. I'll give you another example. I unfortunately live on LinkedIn. I write a lot on LinkedIn. And I've been writing on LinkedIn for a long time. And I know a lot of writers who've been writing on LinkedIn for a long time as well. What I am seeing now are the same writers who just don't write like the way they used to. I've studied their writing style. Their writing has become, and this is not about M dash, by the way. I love the M dash. But the writing has become mechanical. It's too punchy. It's short sentences. And it's sucking the soul out of that creative endeavor that humans have, right? So I think we have to figure out that discernment here to make sure that we understand what is good output and what is bad output from the AI.
I think, Ali, you kind of touched on, obviously, we're touching on some of these topics already, but there's a core tenet you kind of talk about I think, in your book or maybe one of the articles, that care without results is chaos and results without care is cold. How can a manager leverage AI to be more human? And can AI actually help us identify when, let's say, a team member is struggling or needs
Right.
a one-on-one?
Yeah. And people might give me an eye roll. In my heart, before I give you the answer, I've trained thousands of managers how to become better leaders. I've written a book on this. So this is near and dear to my heart. I absolutely 100% unequivocally believe AI can help managers become better leaders and more human. And I'll prove it to you, by the way. So most leaders have, maybe you guys have also done this, have taken an MBTI or a DISC or a personality assessment, right? Most of us have done it. Now, some of them are good, some of them are crazy. Well, no one cares. I know a company who takes their people through a personality assessment test, whatever you want to call it, right? And I was talking to them, I'm like, what are you guys doing with this stuff? They're like, nothing. We've just done it once and it's just, on someone's Google Drive. And I'm like, why don't you take that data, create a project in Claude, take all of this good data, context that you have that's rotting in a Google Drive, put it in Claude, and then ask it specific questions about your people. Now what this company is doing is they've taken all of this context, and Girish, and when you and I were talking before we started recording a long time back about context, right? They have this core context. And now what managers are doing is, before they have to sit and give someone really difficult feedback, they're going to that project in Claude and they're saying, I have to give feedback to Girish based on what you know about Girish, and this is what I know about Girish. How can I give feedback to Girish in such a way that it's going to resonate? You're saving time. You're getting better. And if you're doing this correctly and responsibly, hopefully you're going back and forth with Claude. You're not one-shotting it. You're going back and forth with Claude. And that is what makes us human, where we've actually practiced giving feedback to someone. Not just practice, guys. I've spent a lot of time doing this. Not just practice, but we inherently understand how this person likes to show up in the world. That's important. Let me give you a second example. So I coach very senior leaders for a living, and I'm ashamed to say this. Sometimes I forget. If someone has said something to me 4 months back, I might not remember immediately. Now, before I do my coaching sessions, I have Claude give me insights from the last 6 months. And I have files, bullets about people. And it's easy for me to remember when I'm having those types of discussions. As a human, I can't remember. I have a number of clients, but now, because of AI, I can remember. Right? So it is making me a better coach. It is making me feel heard. I'm not busy making notes. I know the whatever Zoom, whatever's taking notes, and then I can use it to get some analysis. So there are use cases. The thing is, we don't need to outsource our thinking. We need to outsource the tasks to the AI so we can become better humans. I hope that makes some sense.
No, yeah, it makes sense. Total sense.
Yeah? Okay. So yes, managers can become better at this. I remember when I would do one-on-ones, I would make notes, and it would suck to make notes and to prep and all of that. And now you don't really have to do that. You can get the AI. You still have to prep. But it can be a little more faster, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to our conversation. I want to kind of recap here. I am a teacher at heart. So the first one, this is not a tech rollout. Don't lead with training, lead with use cases, modeling over mandates. So don't say everyone's going to get certified. Sure, but look what I'm doing so that it incentivizes people to do it. We spoke about AI champions and creating a culture of rewarding them. And the fifth one, you guys, this is the key differentiator. I'm going to save the best for the last. In this new world that we are in, for you to succeed or for the organization to succeed, every single employee is now a builder. Every single employee is an operator, which means the L&D person can't just show up with slides They have to open the hood and say, this is what I'm trying and this stuff works. Or, you know what? I have this agent, and you don't have to be technical, by the way. It's a crazy world. You can learn this stuff. I've never written Python in my life. I created a full dashboard based on Python, right? That's wild to me. Everyone has the opportunity to build. That's how we're going to learn. I'll give you an example. The CEO of Bumble was talking about this, where she's like, I'm not telling people to just take training. I am using ChatGPT as a coach, as this, as that. And then I'm telling my people, this is how I'm using it. And now they're using it because I'm using it like this, right? So in this world, the idea that you're not going to look under the hood because you are so senior is not going to work anymore. You have to open the hood, you have to look under the hood, and you need to build if you want to move faster. I think that, to me at least, I think it's a non-negotiable. It might not be a non-negotiable right now. I think it's going to become a non-negotiable in the next 2 to 3 years.
Alias, a question that I had was, do you see so this is something that's interesting, because do you see where every company has a culture, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. They have a culture.
Right.
That's perhaps what makes them unique. And you've often seen employees say, I love the company I work for because of its culture. With a lot of dependence on AI, and then there's a lot of positives as we've talked about, do you see that there's a shift where AI now defines the company culture? Or how does a company ensure that you're using AI in the right spirit and acknowledging the culture that you've taken so many years, it's taken hard work to build over time?
Yeah, I've not seen a company where AI is defining the culture. I don't even, that scares me, honestly.
Yeah.
If AI was doing, the culture is so huge, that's our domain, right? That's what we as humans own, right? What I have seen is, in fact, I'll give you an example. I was talking with a very senior leader whom I respect. I admired this person, and you're gonna laugh. I was trying to sell her on AI training, and she's like, I don't believe in this stuff. She's like, no, this scares me. Now, and this is one of the smartest people I know. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Maybe this is, I think, last year. Maybe they've changed their mind. But speaking of culture, if someone in such a position is saying, I don't think this is for us, that's going to be a problem from a transformation standpoint, right? But I think, Girisha, and please stop me, I think your question is more about the values of a company. And
Yes.
the values of a company inherently are human values, right? We could use AI to come up with the languaging around it, some behaviors around it, but the values should and will always come from us. We are the owners of the culture of a company, the leaders, the employees, etc. I don't see AI playing a role in that specific aspect, but who's to know? There's probably a small startup that has an open claw that's creating your culture and values and all of that stuff. But I think with the big companies, I don't see. I see a clear demarcation between values and AI, at least right now.
Yeah, because the reason, one of the intent of my question was, is it critical that before AI is widely adopted in the organization, do you need to train it? Again, we go back to context, right? And
Right.
maybe some of this is context. Do you need to train AI to say, hey, these are our values, this is how we operate, so that when employees engage with AI in whatever sense it may be,
Yes.
it's providing results or outcome, keeping that in mind?
The answer is absolutely. And for your listeners, I'm a tactical specific guy. So let's get tactical. I was helping a company hire leaders. They have a set of values, right? And they're like, we want to hire people by values. And I'm like, okay, so you have context, values, you have job description. That's context again. Let's use that. Let's come up with a package, feed it to the bot, and let's see what kind of questions it comes out with. Now the questions are value specific, resume specific, job description specific, and they had a competency model around what makes a good leader great. Think about how targeted the questions became, right? But yes, the values were human. Upstream is human, downstream is AI. So absolutely, if you have values, in fact, I would tell anyone who's listening, this is going to be one of the more important things I'm going to say. And I'm working on this personally, which is this idea of personal context management, PCM. What does that mean? Fancy word. All it means is all the gunk, all the context that you have on yourself, extrapolate that to the company, that has to be stored in some local LLM in your company. That's the company's brain trust. It's not Claude. It's not, that's overarching, right? But the context of the company needs to be stored so then you can work through it. Now, when it comes to Microsoft Copilot, they have this thing called Work IQ. What is Work IQ? It's literally reading your email, your Slack. It's getting all the context so that you can work downstream. The question is how many people are using it?
To that point, Ali, like I know like a lot of the LLMs themselves have created, I think in the case of Anthropic, they have created a constitution, right? Which they have provided their model that, hey, like these are this is the constitution you have to follow. These are the values you have to follow, right? So that there is guardrails around how the model is gonna provide those outputs, right?
Yeah.
Based on your prompts. So I'm seeing that for sure. One question I have is very personal for me, at least, is that especially with the speed of AI, what I'm seeing is, and I feel this for me personally, there is this analysis paralysis, right? Many professionals, especially with the speed AI is going, how can you as an L&D expert, what is the advice you would give, right, to build a sustainable learning rhythm that incorporates AI without burning out?
Right. And it's interesting. I'm reading about this where people are now spending more time, not less time. And AI's promise was you would not spend more time on it. Analysis paralysis. I'm going to go back to this idea that we briefly spoke about, which is discernment, which is figuring out what is the right answer. What is it that I'm trying to do versus just because AI can help me with 20,000 things, let me work on 1,000 things, right? The skill of discernment is instead of working on 20,000 things, let me work on 20 things and do them to the best of my ability. So I think that judgment piece, the discernment piece comes in. And that's why I'm telling companies all the time, learn how to prompt these things. If you give it good context, if you learn how to prompt this, hopefully you're not going to be in a situation where the answers are just crazy all the time. If it has your context, you're going to still go back and forth. There's still going to be a little bit of paralysis analysis because there's still a lot of content, Vandeep, right? You're still drinking water from a fire hose. That's what's going on. It's like there's so much coming towards you, but I think you have to get to a point where you're developing a skill of saying, this is good enough. I don't need to work on 6,000 other things just because the AI is telling me I need to work on 6,000 other things. And that's where your creative strategic mind comes into play. But I am seeing this where especially developers are saying, we're pumping out more and more releases because we can go faster. But what is the downside to that? The downside to that is tech debt. Because the AI is coming up with thousands of lines of code. And I'm seeing this a lot, which is, oh, we're not writing any code anymore. We're spitting thousands of lines of code. But is that code any good, is what I'm asking. Does it even work really well? So I think those are areas that we need to kind of sort out as well.
So, Ali, what advice would you give? And I'm going to take a step back and then perhaps delve a little bit into the human element, which is if I'm looking for, to interview someone to hire for, let's say, a junior level position, right, in our company, someone that's probably out of college, maybe 2 to 3 years of work experience, right? So not just starting out in their career. What are some of the things that I would, in this AI world, as a manager or as a leader, what are some of the things that I would need that would help me figure out if that person is actually going to be a good fit in our organization? Because one of the things that you mentioned earlier was you want to be, and I know this was related to AI champions, but you want to be a domain expert because that's
Right.
number one.
Yeah.
And you want to then that helps you figure out how to leverage AI. If you're interviewing, folks that are, junior that don't have that expertise, what am I looking for? Or has the playbook changed in that area?
Yeah, I don't know if the playbook has changed. I think there is one part that's changed, which is we've been talking about this for a while, but I'm seeing this happen more and more. If I am hiring an employee, I am absolutely looking for skill, typically, and I'm thinking through this because there's a reason behind this. Skill typically has been the most important criteria. You would agree, right?
Yes.
But if you look at Sam Altman, how the OpenAI guys are hiring right now, guess how they're hiring? They are hiring for skill, but that is the least of their criteria. Why? Because skills have a half-life. What they're really hiring for are your values and my values aligned. One. Two, how fast can you learn? How flexible and how nimble are you? And the third is your skill. Now, I'm not saying if you're hiring for a coder, you hire a doctor thinking that we're not hiring for skills. Yes, you're absolutely hiring baseline. You're hiring for someone with very high IQ. But what I'm seeing is not just high IQ and high EQ, but your learning velocity is what I am really after. And I'll give you an example. If I'm interviewing someone, I am asking them, what is the last thing you've learned which is not related to your career or outside of your career? If someone tells me, you know what, lately I'm trying to impress my girlfriend by making a poached egg, and a poached egg is really difficult to make, I like that. That's a great answer, because I'm like, okay, this guy is learning new things. I'm telling guys, I spent a lot of time researching this stuff. People who are quickly separating themselves from other people are people with this capacity of always learning, finding joy in learning, and learning faster. In fact, I'm looking at two guys. Both of you are learning how to do podcasts, how to edit. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this, correct? But you're doing it, and your learning velocity is just skyrocketing right now. That is the person I'm looking for. And this sounds cliche, but I'll say this. I've hired a lot of people over my 18 years. Skill is important, but I've always looked for someone who has high will, meaning they want it bad, right? They just want to figure this out. I remember I hired this kid a long time back. And a kid, like, I'm getting old now, I guess. And he didn't have the right skills for the job, but it was very clear that he was really hungry. He said, I can figure it out. I need a shot. I need some training. I can do this stuff. And I clearly remember talking to, we were in a panel and we're like, this is going to be a risk. But he was so persuasive that he could do the job. He was hungry, and we took a shot, and it worked out great. I think in this day and in this age that we're in, intelligence, I don't want to say this because I'm not even sure if this is the right phrase, but it seems like intelligence has become a commodity because you can learn stuff fast, but I don't know how many people are learning is what I'm after. So if your learning velocity is high, I think you're going to do really well.
Yeah. Ali, you also talked big about making small shifts today, right? Not
Yeah.
someday.
Right.
Or in your book. Is there like one AI-driven small shift a manager can implement tomorrow morning to improve their team's work?
Yeah. And I didn't have to think of this at all. If you, one thing I would do is, if I don't know how this would work in person, but I'm assuming if you're not in person, if you're virtual and you're using Zoom or Teams or whatever, and you have transcripts for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I would take all the transcripts. I would assume I have permission here at this point. I would upload the transcripts today, tomorrow, in your LLM of choice, and I would ask it specific questions around. A simple question I could ask is, how much out of the 4 hours of transcript data that you have, how many questions did I ask? LLMs have become smart. If you give it a transcript, they can tell you if you were listening based on timestamps. I would figure out if I'm listening enough, if I'm asking enough questions. I would ask it to give me some insight. I do that when I'm coaching people, which is give me some insights. Where did I mess up? Was I talking a lot? Did I listen? Did I ask more questions? And again, I'm assuming you don't have an executive coach to help you with that stuff, right? You could do this today for $20 a month. You could do this today. I'm putting myself out of a job here by coach people for a living, but I do this with my clients, right? I'm like, this is incredible. So you already have 4 hours or an hour of context. This is easy. I would do it, and within 30 seconds, you would get a great answer. And hopefully that helps. That is just one thing you could do to become a better leader.
Ali, I mean, this is probably something that maybe a bit of a off the wall question, but You've spent years helping managers become all in. If you were to write a bonus chapter today titled "The AI-Powered Manager," what would the first sentence be?
Before I give you the sentence, this is my way of figuring it out. But I'll tell you this: so the book has a chapter on AI, and it's already dated, which is crazy. The book came out in November. I think the first chapter, the first line would be to open the hood, would be not to be afraid of this thing. And I know I'm cheating because you said one line. It would be to reject any cynicism and to find out for yourself. I don't think AI is here to save us. I don't believe that. I also think AI is not here to destroy us. I don't believe that either. I think there is a middle ground here. And the only way for anyone to discover the middle ground is to open the hood and to tinker with this thing and to find out where it's amazing and find out where it sucks, because I promise you there are lots of places where it's terrible. For instance, I use Claude a lot. Claude, for some reason, can never figure out what the right date is. It gives me the wrong dates all the time. And I'm like, you're this massive AI. Like, how can you mess up on today's date? It just messes up all the time. So I would start by the idea of not fearing for this thing and really trying to understand and use it. It's a tool at the end of the day. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah, because I always thought, do you feel that, and maybe it's too soon, but maybe 1 or 2 years down the line, you would see, how do you train to delegate agents as opposed to delegating to humans, right? Is that something that, managers would need to know, right?
And I really like that question, Girish, because I teach a workshop on delegation, and I tell people all the time, the way you delegate to a human is exactly how you need to delegate to a bot. That's the good news. The bad news is we are terrible delegators when it comes to humans. We tell the human, go figure it out, right? Okay, great. That's not going to work. The way you delegate is you give a clear vision. You explain to a human what it is that you're looking for. You give it context. Same idea, exactly same idea. And yes, this is not an if situation. This is a when situation. We will have frontier teams. What's a frontier team? A frontier team is human-led with humans and agents. It's already happening in a lot of tech circles. It's a matter of time when it starts to happen to our teams where we have agents and humans coexisting. So you will have to delegate. And by the way, HR folks are already thinking of performance reviews for agents right now, which is how do we evaluate if agents are working or not? And agents are making a lot of mistakes, by the way. So here's a question.
How do you do performance review of an agent?
Right.
Like,
correct.
Right?
And the existential.
And do you fire the agents?
And it's happening. Correct. If the agent doesn't work, do you let them go? But the existential question is, whose fault is it if the agent messes up? Is it the humans or is it the agents? And you might think this is a hypothetical question, but it's not. This literally happened with Amazon, where one of their pages went down and everyone thought that the agent messed up, but some folks at Amazon thought the human messed up. So these are the types of challenges we're going to have to deal with in the very near future, which is who gets the blame, who gets the win, who gets the responsibility when we have frontier teams. I think the world is already shifting. Man, I don't want to say that it's going to shift faster. I don't want to say that, but it seems like it's going to move faster and we're going to deal with very different challenges. But at the end of the day, human-led, it's always human-led. My problem in this world is we can't lose our empathy as humans. That's the most important thing here. When the way we talk, I know a friend who uses ChatGPT and he says, please, and thank you. And, and I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. And he was like, yeah, but that's how I want to talk to a human. Right. So I think it's an interesting world. I tell people all the time to open the hood, play with this thing before you discount it or you say it's great.
Great. Ali, is there anything which we haven't covered and you want to maybe share with the audience, which you think it's important for the audience to know?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of places here. I think the only thing I would say from a transformation standpoint is use cases are very important. Right? Training is extremely important, but figure out 3 or 5 use cases. And this is something I didn't mention. If you really want to go farther faster, figure out use cases by functions. Finance has different use cases, HR has different use cases. Figure out those use cases and then get your AI champions and figure out how you can use AI to solve for those use cases. And a byproduct of that would be, hey, we need training on this tool. Your training adoption goes up, right? Because of this. I think use cases are very important. Again, I'm not saying training is not important. I'm a training guy. It's extremely important. It's going to be more valuable. You're going to get a higher ROI if you have use cases versus just training.
Where can the audience find you? I know you've written a book. You have a newsletter.
Yes, good question. The best way to find me is allinmanager.com, just one word, allinmanager.com. That will take you to LinkedIn. And I'm not as frequent with LinkedIn anymore, but you can find a lot of free content on LinkedIn. You can just join my newsletter. You get access to the book, etc. as well. Just one word, allinmanager.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, just DM me, say hi. I'm not going to bite. I'm not going to sell you anything. We can just have a conversation.
Well, thank you, Ali. This was a great discussion. I think I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolute pleasure and privilege. Ali and Vandeep and I will be look forward to our copy of your signed book.
Yep. I need my All-in Manager book.
There you go. I'm going to send the book to you guys. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on. And
Thank you.
Good luck with your podcast, you guys.
Thank you.